Hi there, my name is Caitlin Bandy and this is my channel Bandy's Books. Today I am here to do a video on a subject that I feel pretty strongly about. I have noticed this particular topic popping up both on Bookstagram and Booktube quite a bit lately. I was most recently made aware of a tag that was trending with this particular subject because of Rosika, the Midnight Reader. I saw a video that she posted to her channel just a day or two ago. I'm going to link it down below and you should definitely check that out. And it is the Banned Book 2022 hashtag. This tag has been around on Booktube for quite a while. There's been different variations that pop up every year, but this year they've recreated and now there's a new 2022 tag. And so I thought I would jump in on that. And the reason is because A, I feel strongly about banning books, and B, because I just finished a book that's been heavily banned in the United States, and I have a lot of things to say about that particular book, about the banning of that book. Usually I limit my tag videos to Tuesdays, but in this instance I thought that I could expand on this subject quite a bit more, and it's not a typical tag video where I ask and answer questions. This is just talking about the subject of banned books and then talking about a book you've read that was banned that you don't think should be banned. So it was kind of like all the stars aligned, and I felt like it was kind of the universe telling me I needed to make this video right now. So here we are. This was not what I had scheduled for Thursday, but we're gonna go with it anyways. So the reason that book banning has been coming up more recently is because here in the States there's been this spate of banning books within public schools, public libraries, things like that. And proponents of book banning will say, oh, we're just banning content that we don't feel is appropriate for a specific age group or appropriate for public forums, things like that. And people that are against book banning are usually in the belief of, there's nothing in books that is worth banning. Like, if you're banning books, it's questionable. Why are you wanting people to not read, what's in a specific book? I personally fall on the side of not banning books. There are books that make me uncomfortable. There are books that I find triggering. There are books that I have no desire to read, but I believe that that's a personal choice. I believe that in that case, I can look at a book and what it contains and what its subject matter is and determine whether I want to read it or not. I don't need somebody in some bureaucratic office somewhere to explain to me that I don't need to read a specific book. And I feel like anytime when you start banning educational tools, banning literature, art, things like that are used to control populations, that control the narrative that a population consumes. And I think that that's a really slippery, dangerous slope. I think that ultimately, even in the terms of children, I think it's up to a family to decide what a kid or a person should be reading. Like I said, as an adult, I am capable of determining what I do and don't want to read. And if I had a child, it would be my responsibility to determine what I think is appropriate for them to read as well. I wouldn't want some school board official somewhere saying, oh, your kid's too mature or not mature enough or whatever. So that's my personal viewpoint on book banning. So I'm going to go ahead now and get into the actual book that I'm going to be talking about today. So the book that I'm going to talk to you about today is All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. This is on my TBR for the month, and first of all, let me just admire the beautiful cover. This is one of my absolute favorite book covers. On the back it says, be bold, be brave, and be queer. And on the front, this beautiful drawing is actually of George himself. If you look at his Instagram and social media, he actually has lots of photos where he looks very similar to this, regal with this beautiful crown of flowers. And I just absolutely love this book cover to start. That was initially what drove me to pick up this book. I didn't know anything about the controversy around it. I didn't know that it was banned. I wasn't aware of the content of the story at all. I just thought that the cover was gorgeous and it really called to me. So I read this book in the past 2 days, and the content of it is very fresh in my mind as I talk about this, and I just wanted to get my thoughts out there on this. When I saw this tag pop up yesterday, I thought this is the right story to talk about. This book so far has been banned in 15 states, and it's being banned from schools and from libraries because it discusses race and sexuality and gender identity. Most of the time it's being banned in particularly conservative states And in most of those instances, they're citing that there are depictions of sex in the story, that there's discussions of sexuality, gender, and race that are inappropriate for children, and that's basically the platform that's been used to ban this. I'm gonna just be really honest, I think it's all a load of bullshit. This book does depict sex. There is a couple instances where sex is talked about in this book. The first is an instance of sexual assault, and it isn't detailed in like graphic detail. It's not, even as bad as some of the stuff that I've seen on TV or anything like that. It's just a brief discussion of this is what happened to me, and then he discusses in great detail his emotional reaction to the trauma he experienced. And the reason that it's important to the story is because as a young gay black man, he didn't know how to deal with what he was going through. He was ashamed. He felt like he had to keep it hidden. He didn't know that he could speak up to his family, and he suffered in silence with that trauma for many, many years. It took him well into his adult lifetime to come to terms with what happened to him, and it had an impact on him well into relationships much later down the road. And then the second and third instances where sex occurs in the book are both in terms of him dating as an adult in a consensual relationship, and it is a discussion of his first and second experience with sex. And he discusses the fact that, again, as a gay black man, he never has sex explained to him. In school, sex education is taught towards straight gender conforming couples. There's never a discussion of what healthy sex looks like for gay or lesbian students or non-gender conforming students or trans students, anything like that. And so he goes into these situations very unprepared for them and unsure of himself, uncomfortable, not able to talk about consent appropriately, not feeling empowered. And though both situations are with people who care about his well-being and who treat him respectfully, you can tell that there's a lot of heartache that comes through these moments by not being prepared, by not being educated. And he shares those stories not to shock anyone, but to help people that are following in his footsteps have the knowledge that they're not alone, that they're not the only people that have been through these difficult things, to make us aware of these gaps in education for our children. And it's not lurid, it's not explicit, it's not pornographic. They're very brief mentions, and in the context of the story, they make a lot of sense. The second thing is that this book talks heavily about race. He discusses, being a young black man growing up and, the prejudices that his community faces, the ideals, that his own family deals with, and the larger community, and just what his role is within that black identity. And he does get heavy into, issues of racism, and he is critical of white people and white people's responses to things, but not in a hateful way. It's not like, as a white person, I didn't read this and feel attacked and like he hated me or anything like that. I felt like everything that he had to say was a logical and rational response to his experiences in life and the experiences of his family and relatives and community. And I think that, again, there was nothing so controversial in it that, it needed to be taken off of a bookshelf. Again, this book was written with young adults in mind. I want to say that his goal was like for maybe older middle schoolers up into high school. It is written in short story formats, so you have, lots of little short stories defining key moments in his life and how they helped him develop and grow. And his whole goal of this book, and he mentions it several times throughout, is to make people that are growing up in a similar situation feel less alone. So the young children that are growing up struggling with their sexuality, struggling with their race, struggling with issues of homophobia, racism, etc. His goal is to help them understand themselves, to help them understand that they're not alone, to make them feel like there is a community and that they can get through those things. And I think he does it beautifully. I think the story outlines some things that I know I certainly had a blind spot about, and gave me a lot of things to think about. And I could see, if I was, young, black, and queer, that this might be a really, really important book for me. I would think that this might be something that really confirmed your identity and, like I said, make make you feel like you're not alone in the world, especially if you're living in a difficult place where people are not understanding of who you are. So getting into the banning of it, I think it's sad that this is something that people find threatening. I understand that, conversations around race and gender and sexuality can all be confusing and scary for some people. I know that there is a tendency for people to personalize these conversations and make them about themselves instead of about the larger picture. And I think that ultimately banning books like this sends a message to young, particularly queer children, that their viewpoint isn't valid, that they don't deserve to have representation, that they don't deserve to see themselves in books, that, there's something to feel shameful about by, telling their stories, by speaking about their experiences, and that's not the case. Books like this, I think, could be amazing tools and resources to help some of these children that are struggling, and instead, government organizations, mostly state government, are hiding these things away. I think that's really a shameful thing, and I think this is such a beautiful book. I think whether you're an adult or a teenager, it's a worthwhile read. So, anyways, I went on a bit of a tangent there about this book. Ultimately, I think that this book is not deserving of being banned. I think it is a beautiful memoir. It's incredibly poignant. It is this man's lived experience, and this experience could be a powerful tool to help the youth coming up behind us. He's only 33. I found out towards the end of the book in the author's note that he's 33 years old, so he's actually younger than I am, and his lived experience is so poignant, and he articulates it in such a way that it's just very moving, and it just makes me sad to see people feel threatened by something like this. I think that ultimately, like I said at the beginning of the video, what people think is appropriate for their children to read is something that parents should be figuring out at home, not schools mandating and states mandating. I think that this is perfectly suitable for a teenager to read. I think that everything in here is understandable, and if this brings up questions of sexuality for a child or questions about race and things like that, I think those are questions that should be discussed. I think that we suffer sometimes for not wanting to discuss difficult topics, for not knowing how to approach sexuality, gender, race, and I think ultimately that's what people are trying to avoid when they ban these books is, avoid these difficult conversations, avoid children thinking about topics that make them uncomfortable. And I think we need to lean into that more. I think we need to share stories like this because, in my case, this isn't my experience, and there's nothing in my life that could give me this experience. But by reading this, I can be more compassionate and understanding of someone else's experience. I think that's a thing that's so important to foster in society. Anyways, I'm gonna end this here. Just say that, ultimately I think banning books is wrong. I'm particularly sad that this book is banned in so many states, and I will continue to support different groups that make sure books like this are getting into the hands of the young children or young people that need them. I know that there is a couple charities that I found through Bookstagram, I'll link them in the description, that actually take this book and other queer stories and make sure to distribute them to children in states where, there's a high prevalence of queer stories being banned. So if you're interested in supporting a cause that helps prevent book banning, definitely look for the links below. And if you haven't read this book, I highly recommend it. It's a short, easy read. Well, I shouldn't say it's easy because it covers some very difficult territory, but it's short and it's written in a way that's very digestible and understandable and relatable. So that's the end of this. I'm Caitlin Bandy. This is Bandy's Books. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Maybe comment down below and let me know how you feel about book banning. Is there a book that's been banned that you really loved? Tell me. And if you're gonna do this tag and talk about a banned book, also let me know so I can come watch your video and comment on it, because I want to see all the videos. I want to hear about all the banned books. So yeah, if you're not already subscribed, consider hitting the subscribe button down below, and then you'll never miss one of my videos. I'll definitely be talking about this book some more and other ones in the future. Thanks. Bye.